Hello everyone, Zero here, and the Arc World Tour is nearing its end with one final competition. It's Arc World Tour Finals happening this upcoming weekend at the time of recording in Los Angeles, California. We have 15 qualified competitors coming over to see who is going to be the best at Granblue Fantasy Versus Rising, and with one more to qualify at an LCQ bracket there. However, with me today, and also gathering throughout the week, I've had some competitors give their perspective on their approach as they prepare for the event. Today is Kanme's own Xerom. How are you doing today, Xerom?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much for taking the time. There's a lot to look forward to this upcoming weekend here. I mean, so much has been going on as far as like the patch changes. 2.0 is hit, and honestly, it's looking like your character's looking pretty good in this patch, and not too many changes have hit. So how are you feeling with Charlotta going into 2.0?
Well, in 2.0, my character, and as you mentioned, it hasn't really changed too much outside of a few like LDP changes. That kind of makes her a bit more of a gorilla in a sense, but I'm not really that worried about how significantly the game has changed with my character.
For sure. I mean, like, one of those larger changes, talked about the DP changes. There's that new counter hit state that they've added to DPs. Defense has been changed with BCs now being minus. How are you feeling about those universal changes?
In general, I do think the universal changes has kind of weakened defense a little bit, but that also changes a lot of players' approach towards the game. You kind of see it how a lot of players are a lot more hesitant to just throw out DPs now in fear of being like smacked massively and losing 70% of their life in one interaction. And as a result, you can kind of run stronger offense, or even offense in general is kind of like a bit more pokey, a bit safer, because they're trying to bait out the DPs, you know? So offense is a little less autopilot-y, and then defense is a little bit more reactive and thinking it through now. And I think those are pretty good changes.
I definitely agree with like the defensive changes. It almost feels like to me the like we've kind of gone back a little bit to how vanilla felt in a way of like that high risk if I do try to put out that DP, right? Because remember the early days of vanilla, it was kind of, some folks would say it's like anime Sam show. I've heard a couple times for vanilla, which was interesting.
Anime Street Fighter, anime Sam show.
So I'm glad to see the risk come back here. I've definitely seen more folks become more conservative, in the Brave countering and Brave points in general system is just a little less used now. It's still very much a staple for defensive options, but also it's definitely become that more high risk, high reward factor here. But talking about high risk, high reward, Sandolphin's out, and these form changes are adding a little bit of risk to his play. And I don't know, how are you feeling about the character? Have you had a chance to play Sandolphin much at all, or are you practicing against the character, preparing for Arc World Tour?
I tried out Sandalphon both in the demo back during Frosty's and when the when he released in the new 2.0 patch. He's not really a character for me personally. I'm not really very good at playing like Shoto West characters, and I would consider him to be more of a spicy Shoto with his form changes. But ultimately, it's still Fireball, traditional DP, and then advancing for special Tatsu-esque. But I do think he's a very good character. I don't think he's bad. He's very much high tier, but not say like top one. You cannot contest him at all. He's very deliberately made with weaknesses in mind, and it's kind of like very apparent when you actually kind of watch his game plan and his gameplay, like where he tends to struggle.
Yeah, definitely started to notice, especially in comparison. You talked about at Frosty, it seemed like we had that initial perspective. There were some uncertainties because we didn't have the notes out there, but now to see it come through fruition, especially with that 20% increased damage going for wind, it is that high risk form to take, but it has so much versatility. And you have that air dash, you have a faster fireball, faster approach, but then also you make a mistake, you're pretty much dying for it there. So it's going to be fascinating to see how that character develops. And I thought for sure at the time at Frosty we might see a lot more of that character at Arc World Tour Finals, but starting to look like that might not be the case. Y'all might be safe for at least a few more months on this character.
Yeah, it does kind of look like that going into it. He's pretty popular on ranked right now,
yeah,
of course. But I don't think too many people want to like dump their current their current mains and their game plan and like maybe try to pick up Sandalphon thinking he's like a nobody's played this character before. I'm just going to like scam wins out of everybody, that kind of thing, right?
Right. Yeah, that would make sense. It seems like folks are doing more caution, kind of picking into it here and leading into their qualification spots. And speaking of, by golly, you made it through points. You happy, a little worried you weren't going to make it? Like, I'm just, come on. Xerom not in Arc World Tour would be interesting, considering that you were like one of the first qualified at the last Arc World Tour. So jumping into this one here through points, you're feeling more confident now that you've locked it in here. So how did that Kayane Cup look for you as we waited to figure out the last few platinums?
It was definitely a close call after CEO Taku. While I did technically secure my spot, then it could have easily shifted based on the results of Kayane. So I was keeping a very close eye on that. Really praying that Saki managed to pull it through, or that everything just happened to line up perfectly. Like skill won the entire thing. It was just so beautiful. It definitely was a huge relief that I managed to make it in at the last second.
I'm definitely excited to rewatch through that Kayane Cup. I've definitely been trying to take notes, especially on the characters that have been impacted the most in 2.0. Fittison I've had my eye on him with that Siegfried, who seems to be pretty well transitioned even before that patch had really hit for him. So I think he's going to do pretty well with the Siegfried. But yeah, Kayane Cup is a spectacular tournament to check out. If you haven't watched it, folks at home, definitely take the time to do so. But as you're going into Arc World Tour, how have you been preparing yourself for this momentous occasion, right? Like, this is your second time showing up at an Arc World Tour finals. What's your mind going into it at round 2?
For this time around, my routine hasn't significantly changed, even with the approaching deadline. I'm still basically just hopping on and playing whenever I have time, or during tournament days, and just grinding it out,
As you're preparing, is there anybody that you maybe really want to run into in those group stages, or maybe there's somebody you want to avoid running into, or, even in that same vein of just like, is there somebody that you hope to overcome that you've really had a target on their back for quite some time?
Well, everybody attending is usually either a Beatrix or a Grimnir, so there's not anyone I particularly want to run into based on that fact alone.
Yeah.
I am hoping that a certain someone doesn't decide to target me frame one, based on our previous histories or anything like that. But at the same time, I think because my seed is so low based on my point placings, it might kind of deter certain people from trying to combat me during the pools phase of the event, due to the risk of maybe running into somebody like Gamera or Tororo, who also think that I'm an easy target, So hopefully that kind of wards off some potential threats.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully they also remember that you've been there before. This ain't your first rodeo here. You've come up at least another year wiser going into this Arc World Tour. So I'm definitely curious to see how the group stage breaks down and how folks get to pick their order and groups, especially since I've heard folks really trying to strategize those picks. I think it can get pretty volatile that Thursday, so that's going to be an exciting show to tune in for. So I guess before we kind of round this out here, is there anything that you'd like to say to the folks at home? Like, you're working on any surprises for your character, or maybe you've got something new that we should keep an eye out for, or something you want to leave the folks with before we head on out and see you off onto Arc World Tour Finals?
While I like to say that I do have a secret weapon up my sleeve, ultimately I'm still just a Charlotta at the end of the day. It will kind of take a considerable amount of time to practice and pick up a new hidden character at this stage of the game, but I'm just hoping that I continue to do well with what I've known to do at this point in time. I do want to say that looking at this AWT D16 competitors, I'm playing like Charlotta. You have a Matera. Like there's a diverse cast of characters going into this AWT right now. It's not impossible to make it to this stage with the characters that you love, and I'm really hoping that I kind of, inspire some people to stick with their guns, and hopefully they don't think that you have to always play a top tier to make it to this kind of level of competition.
Yeah, you know what, and this is the one player that I would love to hear this from, Xerom. Like, you talking about that, looking at your match history, which I'm still putting together. For the most part, you've faced almost more than half of the competitors in this top 16 roster. You've traveled internationally to compete, even in the EU. You've been facing off against top tier characters. You've crossed against Zane, and you have like a pretty favorable matchup against Zane outside of the one ECT performance, which I imagine you're definitely chomping at the bit to get the run back there. But beyond that, like, you've absolutely hit the mark in terms of like trying to combat against these high tier characters with just Charlotte. And it just goes to show that Granblue Fantasy Versus Rising is a game that you could just pick a character you like and do very well. Even some of the bad characters are still doing okay. Vikala got way better than what she was in her initial release, and you know, it just takes a little bit of dedication, a little bit of work, and you can still keep up with some of those high tier characters as well. So thank you for really setting an example for the folks at home who are really interested in checking out Granblue. All right, well, that being said, thank you so much for the time here, Xerom. Where can folks find you out on the interwebs?
Primarily, you can find me on my socials. My Twitter account is probably the main space you'll probably see me here and there. That's ssbfc_Xerom. And then I also do occasionally stream Granblue when I'm fighting in tournaments or if I have some free time. That's over at twitch.tv/Kachua. That's Kachua. Do not ask where I got that name from.
I was about to. I felt like it. I guess I won't, but thank you so much for your time. Greatly appreciate it. And everyone who watched this video series, thank you so very much. Again, Arc World Tour will be happening this upcoming weekend. That'll be March 21st to the 23rd, where the group stage picking happens on the 20th. That Thursday night is going to be the kickoff of the entire event. We hope to see you there. Tuned in not only for Granblue Fantasy Versus Rising, but Guilty Gear Strive and Under Night and Birth 2. It's certainly going to be a great celebration of Arc System Works titles. But until then, everybody, stay happy, stay healthy, and later days.
Thank you.